Hey guys, Jordan from the Affirmation Project. Just had a few thoughts about being a good person and what that means. It's something I've been thinking about for a while now. I mean, you can be a good person, but are you really naturally a good person? What I mean by that is if it's an effort to do good things and help people, if it takes thought and an approach where you have to kind of force yourself into it to do the right thing, are you really a good person or are you just playing a role and pretending to be a good person because that's the way, I don't know, society says you should be or the way you want to perceive yourself? The reason I think this is because some things come very naturally, personally for myself, in terms of helping people, especially the people who are close to me and that I love. I'll go out of my way to help those people. But when it comes to strangers and people, not in my tribe, if you like, it's much harder, and I have to actually think about kind of making myself more inclined to help those people. And that's really got me questioning, is that just a result of tribalism? So we all have our different clans and tribes that we ascribe ourselves to, whether that's, a soccer football team, whether that's your family unit, your close knit friends. You'll always find that you don't like somebody new um, who approaches your clan until they're kind of within your group, then you'll begin to like them. It's like people from opposite football teams, they'll hate each other, but if they actually just sat down and got to know each other, they'll realize they've got a lot in common and that they actually would quite get along with each other. It's just this tribalism, which I think is built into us, must like some kind of survival mechanism, not to trust people that we don't know. But of course, in order to know people, you have to get to know the people that you don't trust. So it's kind of a vicious circle. So yeah, I'm very keen to help people within the tribe, but outside not so much because of a lack of trust and a lack of me knowing whether they're worthy of help. And I know that sounds very judgmental and like high and mighty, but often I find myself thinking people who've got themselves into certain situations and predicaments, the first place you've always got to look is in the mirror and say, was it me? Is it my fault? Are they the reason that they're in that situation? And I mean, does that make me a good person if I'm thinking those things? Or would a good person who is naturally good and didn't have to think about being good, would they just help that person anyway, regardless, even if they knew that they'd put themselves in that situation, you know? So I just think being a good person, like everyone says, be a good person, almost that kind of defeats the purpose. If you have to tell someone to be a good person, or you have to think, I'm going to be a good person, then maybe you're not a good person. I know loads of selfless people who just, take everybody in. They don't really know with open arms and try and do their best to help them. And they're not cynical about things. I think that's personally for me my major issue with trying to be a better person is I am massively cynical because the whole world and the whole of society is a massive trick and illusion that we've all been sucked into. So in order for me to look at an individual or a group of people and believe their situation and believe their good intentions and that they're good people worthy of help, it's really hard for me because I naturally am very pessimistic now. I always look for the trick and the illusion of grandeur or the illusion of goodness that they're trying to present. And then again, that brings me back to myself questioning, am I a good person? I'm trying to leave specific examples out of this just because I don't want to, talk negatively or anything. But I mean, personally for me, my wife, for example, I would do anything for. My sisters, my mum, my dad, I would do anything for in a heartbeat. I would give everything that I have just to make sure that they were happy. But turn that onto a person in another country who I don't resonate with or have anything in common with, I wouldn't do that. I'd keep everything for myself. And everything's on a scale, isn't it? You've got selfish on one end of the scale and you've got virtuous and good on the other side. Where does that make me fall on that scale if I'm only willing to help people on the side that is, within my collective, within my unit, within my immediate family and my immediate life? And if I am willing to just help those people, and I hope you're relating to what I'm saying here, I think a lot of people will. But if you're only willing to help those people who are closest to you, is that in fact selfish? Are you in a roundabout way just helping yourself? Because if you think about it, the reason you want to see those people happy and that you would do anything for those people, does that relate back to your happiness? Because it makes me personally very happy to see the people that I love doing well. So in a roundabout way, me helping those people to do well is fulfilling a selfish purpose within myself. It's just a never-ending circle. It's really hard to get your head around, and that's why I've been pondering it for a few months now, just what makes a person good. I mean, you can read examples. I mean, well, the most classic one everyone could think of would be Jesus, I suppose, in the Bible. Just he would help anyone, regardless of if they were in his circle, if they were a good or bad person, whatever that means. He just didn't even cross his mind. He'd help them anyway. He'd do what he could anyway. So you read these examples throughout history of how people should be and how we should live our lives, in terms of deities, whatever like that. But I just think it's so hard in practice and in principle, especially you've got to factor in that society itself is constructed and built around the fact that in order for you to get ahead, most of the time you've got to shit on other people, let's be honest. So a classic example of, a torment of mine was I was doing quite well. I moved to Australia and was living in Sydney. And I was working my way up the ranks of the hierarchy, if you like, of a typical, financial organization, within the financial sector. And I actually spent my big break, if you like, from entering that organization was a management role, managing a team of, only 10 to 20 people, quite modest, of just selling financial products, not even services, so a product, so a credit card, a loan. And I just found myself questioning whether I was a good person doing that, and it got that was when I first experienced, major cycles of anxiety and depression in my life, was whilst doing that job. And I think a lot of it boiled down to, it wasn't moral, it was an immoral system. In order for me, I was financially incentivized to basically extort people. Whether you look at it or not, you can put your rose-colored spectacles on and say, I was helping this person out with their expenses by giving them this loan, making them happy to get what they wanted. But at the end of the day, it wasn't that. I think maybe 1% of the role was that. The other 99% was increasing people's exposure to debt, which is, one of the biggest frauds and Ponzi schemes, multi-generational, not even my lifetime. But I was directly involved in promoting that for the banks, some of the most immoral institutions that we have in society today. And that really, I think, even if you're not aware of it, it will take a heavy toll on you. And, you really have to look at yourself in the mirror. And I feel like the people who are within these kind of roles, back to on my other videos, are they NPCs? Are they actual spirited beings? Are they just cannon fodder to be recycled again and again back into the matrix just to fulfill society's role? So it's a big sentence there with a lot of, different terms. But hopefully if you're in these circles, you'll be able to decipher it. So any kind of sales role, I feel like for me personally on my journey, I can't do that anymore. I'm only 28 years old. I was in sales for maybe 4 or 5 years, but being incentivized not to help another person, but to help yourself by pushing a product or a service onto them, it isn't moral. And that's the way society's been set up in order to keep the debt machine going. The central banks have set it up so it has to keep feeding on itself, the endless increase in debt and enslavement basically to the system, to society. That's the reason why, I was trying to explain to people the other day, but they just don't understand, like, interest rates are at a historic low, but you still can't afford a mortgage. Why do you think that is? Like, how do you think people were buying houses when, mortgage rates were 15, 20%, within our lifetimes? How do you think that happened? Imagine that now. You go and buy $1 million house and your interest rate is 20%. Are you kidding me? $200,000 a year just to service the debt. It's just a joke, and people don't understand the trajectory of this and where it's going. And it's just made 99% of people, it's my cynical view again, immoral and not good people. Because how could you be a good person unless you're willing to, give things away and sleep on a cardboard box on a street corner? Does that then make you a good person? And a lot of people say in order to do good, you need to help yourself first and set yourself up so you're in a position to do good, and then you can do good. But that's just a never-ending carrot, isn't it? Because, like, at what point do you set a figure? Like, when I am worth X dollars, that's when I'll start helping people. Do you assign a percentage of your wealth along the way to helping people? It's not even wealth. You don't need wealth to help people. You can help people without money. Just obviously money is an enabler that makes things a lot easier. And to be honest, this video, I try to get my thoughts out, and it's come across very incongruent, and I've come to no conclusions. But I'm just hoping by throwing this stuff out into the ether, something will resonate with me, or maybe, the one view I get this year, you'll come along with an idea and tell me I hit on something there. But yeah, what is it to be a good person? Jesus, what a conundrum. Like, and if the job of being in this realm is to be a good person, we've got to figure that out. Maybe it's really easy and we are overthinking it. Maybe it's one good gesture in our whole lifetime. Maybe that enables us to move on to the next level. Or maybe you have to completely give everything up, and that's the only way that, you relinquish your soul at the end of this life. There's a great line that, in a song, I forget what it is, I'm completely taking this from Matt at Quantum of Conscience, but the line is, the only things you get to keep are what you give away. And, that resonates with me a lot. I feel a lot of truth in that, but to what extent? I mean, who are you helping if you've got nothing and you're on a street corner? Like, who are you helping then? Oh, and this is just another rant, but I cannot stand people who say, oh, they look at these millionaires and people doing well, and they say things like, if only they gave away 10% of that, imagine the good they could do. And my response is the same thing every time. It's like, I just look at them and I say, I can't help myself. I just buy it every time. I say it's irresistible. So, so you're involved with helping people in charities. So who do you give your 10% to? And they look at me like, wait, not me. I wouldn't give 10% of my wealth. I haven't got what he's got. He's got loads. And I'm like, so how can you, subject this person over here to a different code of ethics than you yourself have got? 10%'s 10%. Doesn't matter how much money you've got. Everyone can afford to live on 10% less. So what gives you the right to say that just because they've got more than you, that you shouldn't be contributing the same amount that they are? Can you not see, like, the hypocrisy in that? And they just look at me blank like I'm an idiot, like everybody does. And they don't really know what to say, because nobody thinks deeply anymore, do they? Nobody fucking thinks through anything. They just, they want the next piece of materialism to come along. They don't think about dying. They don't think about what this is all about. It's just really frustrating, but that's my rant over. I'll leave the end of the video on that. But yeah, what is it to be a good person? Who knows? Cheers.